So as we know, and obviously, you and I have been kind of in the media space. We've done interviews before, and we kind of know how that whole thing works. And especially any fan of football knows how Bill Belichick is with the media in general. This past week, Mark, Bill Belichick gave a 9.5 minute answer in response to a question from a reporter about long snappers. Like
Hey,
how that is vintage Bill Belichick right there, is it not? I mean,
well, it's just it goes to show you that if you ask Bill Belichick the right question at the right time about the right subject, he will give you anything and everything that you want.
he will expand, he will give you for some maybe a novel worth of information
Yeah. Yeah.
in this answer. It was amazing because the guy was basically asking about why has the NFL shifted to taking up a roster spot with a long snapper rather than before when they would just have someone play two roles on the team, whether it be a backup right tackle that can also be a long snapper. And he just gave a very long answer about the history of it, how it's become a specialty to both block and snap at the same time, and it was pure Belichick gold, and you could just tell he loved every minute of it. So anytime you could get Belichick to actually show some emotion, I guess you've asked the right question.
100%. And it's one of those things, it's a great reminder why, if anyone questioned why Bill Belichick was on the committee for the NFL 100 and helping choose the all 100 team, that again, like
Yep.
it's like more evidence towards his appreciation for all the details of the game. And what he did to Zach Wilson this weekend just goes once again to show you that if you're questioning anything and or that he prepares or goes through or the way he thinks, you're in the wrong there for questioning, because the man just like I, we'll talk more about it when we get to the game, but I have such strong thoughts about like how I'm kind of excited for this year. Everyone was talking about this was an Aaron Rodgers scorched earth year. This could be a Bill Belichick scorched earth year as he's getting
Yes.
back into this season and with a new quarterback and battling back against Tom Brady, who won the Super Bowl obviously last year, winning the divorce.
Welcome back here to the Football Lounge. We missed you last week, buddy, but glad you're back here ready to go.
I'll just say I don't know if listen, I'm vaccinated. I've been vaccinated since the first time I could get vaccinated. I'm back in like late March, and it was one of those people who was like, "Oh, I'm vaccinated. I got nothing to worry about." I'll tell you what, COVID was no joke. It hit me like a ton of bricks. As you know, if you listen to the show, it's hard to get me to be quiet or to not talk about anything or to not have energy. And I couldn't do it. Like I didn't do my own radio show at all last week. My show over the weekend, it was yesterday. Thankfully, Sunday, woke up feeling really good. Today, even better. So I was like, let's do this. I know it's a different setup for me. I'm in my apartment with my dog, if you hear him whining in the background, versus being in my nice, cozy studio. I miss the studio. I will be out of quarantine on Wednesday, very ready to get back. The nice thing about it being quarantined, though, I will say, I finally got to watch Ted Lasso. It holds up. It deservedly wins every award. If you haven't watched it yet, fantastic film. Filming and show, and I had plenty of time to watch football, so I'm very ready.
Yeah, I have not delved into those waters yet. I've heard nothing but great things about Ted Lasso. I'm absolutely going to check it out, and love Jason Sudeikis too. So can't go wrong there. And yeah, man, we had obviously a great week one of games. Really, this past week though, Mark, I felt like there were so many close games, especially like in the afternoon, evening slates. As Murphy makes his appearance, attaboy Murph. Come on, Murph.
He doesn't like that he's being locked. Maybe I should just let him out. But if he keeps going, I'll let him out. He doesn't like
For sure.
being.
Hey, it happens. We can adjust. Absolutely. But yeah, quite a few really good close games this past week, and a lot of different narrative shifts, if you will, from week one. So
Yeah. All right, we're back, and I do agree with you. I think one of the interesting things that we always forget in the offseason about the NFL as it starts back up is that transition from week 1 to week 2, and if think about so many different fan bases and what they've gone through in the last 2 weeks. The Saints from week 1 to week 2. You know what I mean? I think it's just like a Steelers fan. The huge unexpected upset win. You're 1-1 after 2 weeks, but you won the one you thought you'd lose. You lost the one you thought you'd win. Yeah. So it's that dichotomy of starting to play out. The season's maybe somewhere in the middle for so many of these teams. And I think that is exactly what we as fans of the NFL, and as we try to pick apart and see what the storylines are starting to come out of 2 weeks of NFL football, that's the biggest thing that we have to take into consideration. How much are you your week 1 self versus your week 2 self? So many teams are probably somewhere in the middle, those highs and lows. And also seeing teams on the road versus home. Quickly, I'll just say, like, the Bears were a different team at home. That defense, you could tell, home crowd, listening to that, watching that whole game, so much of the energy of hearing the fans back. And Joe Burrow, they kept talking about that was his first real road game. And you saw how much he struggled. So we're learning so much, and in just 2 short weeks. And now you got to start kind of building the blocks of what the season will look like based off that.
Yeah, it's a constantly changing league, and it's a week to week variance, and that's what makes things so compelling and interesting as we go through the season. And pictures become a little clearer as you get throughout the year and stuff. But right now, so much to change. We're doing a little bit different format here than we did last year, and we hope you all like it. And please let us know your thoughts. But last year we kind of did the headlines thing, and I guess this week my headline would have been about just that: patience, preaching patience, because there's not riding the highs, not riding the lows. It's the cliche that everyone talks about in sports for athletes, but it's also should be the same thing for fans. I know it's short for fanatic and stuff, but really you have to measure expectations. If you want to have a more, I guess, true view of kind of where your team lies. If you don't really care about that, then go ahead and just have as much fun with it as possible. But accuracy is important, and I think that's where we kind of have those issues sometimes. For Bills fans getting down on the team last week after their performance, pitch a shutout today this week. So
yeah, and I mean that's why we're going to get into all these games, but it's just so there's just the highs and the lows, and the fact that so many teams, you look at some teams, you think like your Panthers are you really high on, like the fact that they're 2-0, but I actually think they've looked better than I thought they would, even though we both predicted them to be 2-0 at this point in time. So, and then there's obviously like the Miamis, they're 1-1, but it's like Miami's season could be over at this point in time. I mean, depending on what they get from Jacoby Brissett. So we'll get into all these games, and I think that's why we wanted to change this format up a little bit so we could really touch on each game and give that thought. And then, of course, we will get into a Monday night preview. I got some stuff I'm about to put on Twitter here shortly. I know it's going to matter when you're listening to this, but that's another reason to follow us on Twitter, because the good bets for tonight. I love tonight's game, Lions and Packers, obviously.
An NFC North battle, and there's a lot to live up to because the primetime games have just been phenomenal. So we'll get into our
but Sunday Night Football week 1.
Yeah, that was the Bears put up a little bit of a dud there, but we'll just gloss over that one for sure. Before we get into our games of the week, Mark, real quick, let's just recap a couple key injuries, because there were quite a few injuries, especially to the quarterback position this past week. So we'll start with the quarterbacks. Andy Dalton, it looks like it's a bone bruise. No current timetable for his return, but nonetheless, the Bears, are still adamant about him being the starter when healthy. It just depends how long that is, but it's very possible that Justin Fields ends up getting his first start this week against the Browns. Tua Tagovailoa, bruised ribs for him. He is to be determined as well in terms of his status for Sunday. Head coach Brian Flores said it's day to day. It doesn't seem to be super serious right now, but obviously things can change. We're going to have to wait to see some test results on that. Carson Wentz, 2 ankle sprains this past week. Head coach Frank Reich said that today. So he is up in the air right now in terms of his status, to be determined. 1 ankle sprain can be difficult. 2 ankle sprains, I don't know how you get over that quickly. I would say, this is obviously speculation, but I would guess he's probably not suiting up this week for the Colts. Baker Mayfield said his shoulder popped in and out, but there's no real information out there. It doesn't seem to be super serious. They seem to be optimistic that he'll be back. However, Jarvis Landry is week to week with an MCL sprain, likely out this week. And then finally, a couple of the big ones here. Well, the 49ers running back room, everyone got injured. They had newly acquired Trenton Cannon coming into this game because they lost Trey Sermon to a concussion. JaMychal Hasty was out in this one, as well as Elijah Mitchell, who is now day-to-day as well. It seems Hasty got the worst of it. He will be out for a while, said head coach Kyle Shanahan. They're bringing in Duke Johnson and Lamar Miller. So if that's any indication of the status of this 49ers backfield, that's one thing. And then Brandon Brooks, the guard for the Philadelphia Eagles, strained pectoral muscle. He is likely going to IR. And but the worst one there for the Eagles as well was on the other end of the football, Brandon Graham with a torn Achilles, very much likely done for the year, although I don't think they've completely confirmed it. But that is where we stand. A brutal blow to this Eagles team that's really been playing very well so far to start the year, Mark.
Surprising football. Brandon Graham, obviously, not only, I mean, he's one of the great defensive linemen in the game. And he's one of those guys, too, that on a team that's young and young head coach, young quarterback, young wide receivers, young defensive pieces, he was kind of that kind of maybe stabilizing force. It's going to be a huge loss to them. I mean, listen, I'm shocked they're 1-1 through 2 weeks. This is the type of injury, though, that could obviously, for a team that didn't have high expectations anyways, this could send that defense spiraling a little bit. So to me, that was the biggest one. I mean, obviously, I'm keeping my eye on Darrell Henderson as well. It went out with ribs, fantasy team things, implications. Luckily, I snagged
Sony Michel. You got Sony Michel on there. There you go. Yeah.
And Carson Wentz. At this point in time with Carson Wentz, at what point in time do you have to say, like, you watch that injury, the ankle? Obviously, you never can blame a guy for getting injured, but can I blame Carson Wentz for just not being smart? At what point in time do you have to look at him as a guy who's had injury problems? And what are you doing trying to make that play? As you're getting wrapped up, he needs to go to the Eli Manning school of I give up. Honestly.
Or Tom Brady, learn how to take a sack and get sacked properly. Yeah.
Yes, he got them back into that game. And then for the fact of the matter that you then can arguably say that he lost as soon as Jacob Eason comes in, throws the pick, the game unravels for the Colts because you don't have your star quarterback because he can't take care of himself. Because I don't know, it's his fifth year in the league. It was injury prone, 6th year in the league. He has got to start taking better care of himself. I don't know if that's something you can coach out of him. It seems like Darnold's made that transition from being reckless to a little less reckless in Carolina. But it just seems like that is who Carson Wentz is. And that one hurts because the Colts being 0-2 right now. And I mean, the division is still so early, but man, oh man, he's already had such a tumultuous relationship with the Colts, with the foot injury, the COVID, now this ankle. That's just one to have to keep our eyes on for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, all of a sudden now you're looking at the Houston Texans ahead of the Colts in the division. Obviously, as you mentioned, it's early on, but it's still something to keep in mind as the Colts, can't really continue to dig themselves a hole because it's going to be much more difficult to dig yourself out of it in an AFC that very well may be competitive for some of those wild card spots if they don't even contend for this division with the Tennessee Titans by season's end, depending on how long Wentz is out. So that's definitely something to look forward to. All right, Mark, let's now get ourselves into our week 2 recaps, and we're going to rifle through these games. Some will expand a little bit more on than others. Some of them obviously weren't super compelling or had anything extremely interesting happen in them. So we'll gloss over a couple of those, but nonetheless, we'll hit on each one. That's what we're going to try and do every week here so that you at least get a reaction and something from each game of the NFL season. So let's go all the way back to Thursday night. We'll start with that one, Mark. Giants at Washington. Much more interesting game than I went into it thinking it would be. It actually turned out to be pretty exciting late, and Taylor Heineke and company end up coming up with the victory, 30-29. So Washington now 1-1. Giants falling to 0-2. I don't know about you. I thought Daniel Jones actually played really well in this game, and I just thought maybe if they actually went more to some of those read options with him, it seemed to be working. They had Washington fooled on a lot of those plays, and Daniel Jones unfortunately gets that one called back on a very weak holding penalty. It would have been a 45-yard touchdown run. Gets that one called back. I thought he played relatively well. Heineke struggled early on, but obviously comes back and throws a great touchdown pass in the corner of the end zone late to kind of help get Washington over the hump there. But they get that 1-point victory. I mean, what was your main takeaway from this one, being that the Giants are now 0-2 to start the season, whereas Washington is probably where we thought they'd be despite having Ryan Fitzpatrick out of the lineup?
My biggest takeaway from that is, really expecting more from this Washington football team defense through 2 games. Haven't really seen it yet. That's what I thought was going to carry them to this division win. Still feel good about them in the division. I will say this for the Giants. I don't understand at all what Joe Judge and former Cowboys coach Jason Garrett, now offensive coordinator, second year in New York, are doing with Daniel Jones. I completely agree with you. You have got to make sure that at the end of this season, is Daniel Jones your guy or not? I mean, it sounds like a little bit of a broken record like we had with Mitchell Trubisky for the past year, 2 years. You have got to know by the end of the season, is this guy your guy or not? You can't give him another year of just going, well, we'll see. We got to see. He's young. It's just not the way the NFL works anymore. You get 2 years. He's on year 3 now, and he's got Saquon. He's got Kenny Golladay. You gave him the tight end Rudolph. You brought in all these weapons. Like, you just got to put the game in Daniel Jones' hands and figure out if he's going to be your guy or not. So you're 0-2, still very early. But if I was a Giants fan, I would be hounding my coaches every day, Joe Judge, Jason Garrett. Let Daniel Jones see a running offense that fits him. Is he a guy that is capable of winning us this division year in and year out? Because Dak Prescott shows that, he's capable of doing that. Washington doesn't have their guy, and Philadelphia is doing exactly what the Giants need to be doing with Jalen Hurts. Could this guy be our guy going forward? So you've got to start figuring that out.
Yeah, and his teammates got to help him out too. The Giants' offensive line looked pretty rough in this one. Saquon Barkley wasn't able to really get much room to work in this one either. And Danny Dimes throws a really good pass. Yes, it was a little bit long, but it hit Darius Slayton in the hands. You got to make that catch if you're a professional receiver in the end zone, wide open play. That really could have been the play of the game right there and put the Giants in a really comfortable spot. Instead, they leave the window open there, and the Washington's able to come back. So this division, much like last year, is probably going to be one that's got a lot of eyes on it as the season progresses, because we just don't know what we're getting with a lot of these teams. All right, let's move to Sunday, and we'll just kind of go down in order here. So I'll start with the 1 o'clock games, and the Bengals at the Bears. Bears pulling off a tough, gritty win, 20-17 over Cincinnati. Really pressured Joe Burrow early and often in this game. I thought this was a really good performance from the Bears defense. They really had a good response to kind of how they played against the Rams in opening week Sunday Night Football. To come back here at home and look, you can say what you want about the Bengals, but they're not bereft of offensive talent. They've got tons of guys there, and the Bears, for the most part, able to shut down those weapons, hold them scoreless in the first half entirely. And hang on to a 7-0 lead there into the second half. And obviously, we talked about the Andy Dalton injury. Justin Fields comes in. Clearly, there's going to be growing pains. And for anyone out there trying to say, like, oh, see, this is what you wanted, Bears fans. Yes, it is what they wanted. They knew going into this that there were going to be growing pains. No one was saying that Justin Fields is going to come in and immediately take the league by storm and be amazing every game. We knew that going in, he's going to struggle some. And he did, but he also flashed at times and also made some plays that showed why he's the guy with the higher ceiling and the guy that can take this team to victory. And at the end of the day, they got to win. And that's really all that matters. So it's not a gotcha that people think it is with the Justin Fields rhetoric. Everyone knows he's going to struggle, but we also know what he's capable of and what he can do. And he came in and showed some good things. So overall, I imagine you're pleased with the win, but obviously there's still plenty of room to grow for this Bears team, offense in particular, but really just this team in general.
Always pleased with a win. You're absolutely right. Wins are hard to get in the NFL. Ask teams like the Giants, who, what is it, 0-2 now for like 6 straight years, something like that, 7 straight years. Wins are always hard to get. I will say there's a couple points to me, and I tweeted this out, and I know that it's one of those, like, sometimes you have to go back through your tweets when you're preparing for the shows to realize, like, what did I feel in the moment? Because that's what I'm tweeting out. And one of them I felt was, this Bears defense is back to being a defense that this is what we expect from the Bears defense. When you go against a team like the Rams or a team like the Chiefs or a team like the Ravens offense, you're going to give up big plays. They're too talented. They have too many great players. And in a modern day NFL, where the NFL wants scoring and is favoring offenses, it's going to happen. Now, the Bears gave up too many week 1. That was the problem, and it wasn't competitive in that way. It was too many blown coverages and embarrassing big plays. So what did the Bears do? They clenched down and did exactly what you asked them to do against inexperienced young teams or teams that you feel like, hey, a Khalil Mack and a Roquan Smith and a Robert Quinn and a Akeem Hicks and what you hope from Eddie Jackson and Jalen Johnson looked great. Great game from him as well. Can do to a young quarterback in his first real road game where there's a home crowd. Like, that's exactly what you think the Bears defense should do to a Bengals offense. And they did that. Credit to them. Did not love the late Jamar Chase touchdown. And again, a total blown assignment. And you start to realize when you look at stuff like that, you go, okay, there's now something is wrong with the scheme, to where there's not the communication and someone is consistently messing up in the back end of that defense. My eyes are on Eddie Jackson. He should be the leader of that back four. So that's got to get cleaned up. Sean Desai, the young defensive coordinator, has got to look at that. I will say, though, you're exactly right. You never, and I tweeted this out too, you never want someone to lose their job for injury, especially because Andy Dalton was playing extremely well early on. And I thought it was, besides that early first drive where he had to throw away a ball because he just didn't have it scrambling, I tweeted out like, oh, see, that's where you'd benefit from Justin Fields, because he could just get you 5 yards on that play. And now all of a sudden you're in 2nd and short versus a 2nd and 10. And then what happens? Andy Dalton, you can tell, feels that pressure and starts making plays with his legs and gets injured because he's not the type of guy who's built to make those plays with his legs. Well, it looks like what would be a routine play for a running back or a quarterback who's a real athlete, a Lamar Jackson, a Justin Fields, a Kyler Murray. They don't hurt their knee and bone bruise their knee on that play. That's what happens to a guy like Andy Dalton, who's can move. He's shifty, but he's and straight line, but is not built like that. But you can tell he's feeling that pressure to make those plays against his old team. And so it's a huge bummer. But I will say this about Justin Fields. I loved watching Justin Fields play. I loved the interception late because, again, you have got to make those mistakes. And you saw him, you could see where they showed the angle from the end zone. It is a classic young quarterback mistake. Pressure. He had no idea that guy was there because he literally was throwing it to what he thought was a spot. He knew he had an outlet receiver running across his face, and he thought, okay, I saw that linebacker I saw presenting pressure pre-snap. Pressure gets to me too quickly, throws it. But what happens? That pressure from that linebacker, he showed it, but he dropped back into coverage. The pressure came from the outside. He's going to learn from that. Or if he doesn't learn from that, that's when you start saying to yourself, well, maybe we got the wrong guy. Like, so these are the steps you need to go through. I think it's so painfully obvious, I think, for us as fans to say, yeah, this is what we want. This is what we want to see, these growing pains. We want to see him struggling and then learning and going into the film room and having throws to learn from. That's why, again, I think the other thing, and you know what? Credit to the Bears defense. They have to go right back out there after giving up the blown play. Bengals get an easy score, all of a sudden 3-point game. But then credit to Justin Fields for getting that first down and evading that rush. So all of that was great. I love it. And now we have to deal with BS, annoying quotes from Matt Nagy. This is your opportunity. Be done with Andy Dalton. Let's go. Let's do this. Now I'm really starting to question what the hell's going on in Hallis Hall. Because this should be the get out of jail free card for Matt Nagy and the Bears to be like, Justin Fields, we're all in. We're not getting that. So that's really concerning to me. What the hell is going on now that they promised Andy Dalton that you would have the audacity to say that Andy Dalton is still the starter if he's healthy? No. You gave him his chance. He got injured. We're all in on Justin Fields. That's not the rhetoric, and that's annoying me today.
Yeah, that's like you mentioned, get out of jail free card, a good opportunity there. We'll see what actually happens when it comes time for Andy Dalton when he's healthy, what they actually ultimately decide to do, because perhaps they're paying lip service right now, but I'm not super optimistic about that. But as for the Bears defense, 4 sacks of Joe Burrow and 3 interceptions, including the pick 6 by Roquan Smith. So the defense is back. The monsters of the Midway have returned. All right, let's go to the Raiders at the Steelers. Raiders have really been impressive to start the year here, and they are 2-0, 26-17 victory over Pittsburgh at Heinz Field. Obviously a tough place to play in their home opener, first year back with fans. You mentioned it early in the show about getting to see kind of the home field advantage coming back, and just wasn't there for Pittsburgh. And it's really about the offense at the end of the day. The defense didn't make enough plays late. They obviously, speaking of blown assignments, a huge 61-yard touchdown to Henry Ruggs in a very key moment in that game really blew this open for Las Vegas. And it was just too much too late for Pittsburgh to come back at that point. The offense, once again, similar problems to last year, couldn't get the run game going and just slow starts. And you can't have slow starts in this league consecutively and expect to win week in and week out. It's just not going to happen. Big Ben looks off right now. The offense in general looks off. And, Najee Harris is talented, but you can only do so much behind a line that's young, inexperienced, and just not that good. So a lot of issues right here for the Steelers to try and figure out. The only good news is that it is just week 2. But they do have to turn it around soon because they have one of the hardest schedules, if not the hardest schedule in the league. And, there's really not much margin for error in the National Football League, especially when you're in a competitive division like the AFC North. So they're going to have to get it turned around. But, man, kudos to the Raiders. Derek Carr's looking great. I never doubted him. I doubted the team. I doubted a lot of things about this front office and the coaching staff. That's why I had them at 4 wins. Well, they're already halfway there. So I'm not sure I feel too confident about that prediction right now.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said about the Steelers. So I'll just add this, in a league now that's filled with physical, gifted, young, exciting quarterbacks, flipping from, game to game and then watching the red zone, all of a sudden it shows up on Big Ben and he's laboring and he's inaccurate and he knows he has to get the ball out quickly because that offensive line is so bad. It's hard to watch. And especially because Ben is that guy you're just so used to in our heads, in our generation, being 30 years old, as Ben's the guy where it's like, oh no, he's Superman. He's huge. He's big. He can just stand in the pocket for forever. Who cares if the offensive line is bad? And he'll make a big time accurate throw. And it's just not that anymore. And I will say this though, credit where credit is due to Derek Carr. First off, love the play call from John Gruden there, that touchdown to Henry Ruggs. And I got to say this. I mean, Derek Carr's leading the league in passing yards right now through 2 games. They can only win really one way. It's going to be a lot of shootouts. It's going to be heavy offense. But I think their defense is stepping up in ways that they need it to, because they know they're going to be in shootouts. So if you know you're going to be in shootouts offensively, what do you need from your defense? You need a defensive line that can get pressure. Max Crosby has had a great start to the year. Carl Nassib had a great start to the year so far. The Raiders, the strength of the Raiders right now, their defense seems to be their edge rushers. And if you're going to be in shootouts, then that's a good thing for Raiders. I had the Raiders a little higher. I had them 7 or 8 wins, I'm pretty sure. Don't think the Raiders are going to necessarily be a playoff team, but credit where it's due. 2 big wins for them to start the season.
Yeah, a good start for Las Vegas for sure in a division that they're atop the division right now. So that's definitely a good place to be. Don't anticipate that being the case at the end of the year, but nonetheless, that's where you want to be at this point of the season. Let's go to the Texans at the Cleveland Browns. An interesting game here for sure. And before we get into our overall analysis of the game, Mark, we are bringing it back for the 2021 season. Bold strategy of the week.
We have to, especially when things like this happen.
That's right. So this is what happened in this game here. We're in the second quarter. It's a close game. No one's really running away with it just yet. Midway through, Texans pick up 13 yards on a 3rd and 15, so they're 2 yards shy. The Browns are called for offsides, so the Texans now can choose to accept it and have it be 3rd and 10, or decline it and have it be 4th and 2. They decline it and then proceed to punt.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
So the options were you get another offensive play to try and get a first down, or in their head, or we can punt. And they chose punt, and it was a beautiful look on the sidelines of Kevin Stefanski going, wait, did they declined it and then they're going to punt? He looked perplexed, as were all of us viewers as well.
It's one of those moments where you're reminded, like the Texans' great week 1 win, and through 3 quarters were giving the Browns everything. And obviously the Baker injury is something, but it's one of those moments where you realize, again, how many decisions go into an NFL Sunday, how many decisions you have to get right as a head coach during the NFL Sunday. And when you get ones like that are so painfully obvious wrong, like you deserve to get crushed for it, even if you're a rookie head coach and even if the situation is bad. I will say moving on from that decision in the game, I will say I feel terrible for Tyrod Taylor. I literally tweeted out, again, you go back to your tweets, like Tyrod Taylor was like he looked incredible through a game and a half. I mean, incredible. And they were building an offense that like fit him. And it was a bunch of veterans who could just say playing really, really well. And so bummed for the injury. And now we get Davis Mills, primetime Davis Mills coming on up. And so Godspeed to him. And I think the Texan season now is what we expect is going to happen is going to go way down in the toilet. But I will say this about the Browns. All kudos to them for gutting out a win, because again, the worst thing in the world as a football fan is when your team loses a game that the schedule comes out, you circle as a win. You know what I mean? Like that's how a lot of Steelers fans are probably feeling this morning. Like you circle the Raiders as one of your wins. The Browns circle the Texans as one of your wins. You got to get that win. As a Bears fan, I circled the Bengals as a win. You held on, but you got to get that win. So kudos to them for getting the win that they circled. But I will say this. Someone needs to show Baker Mayfield. Glad he was okay to come back to the game. Someone needs to show him that footage. And first off, say, that was a terrible throw. That interception was a terrible decision, and it was a bad interception. So that's step 1. Step 2 is show him the footage of him getting injured tackling and say, Baker, if you want to get paid, never try to tackle a guy again, because that looked a lot worse than it could have been for him. And he's lucky, because that could have been collarbone. That could have been a dislocation that cost you weeks and weeks. I mean, that could have been torn labrum. I mean, that could have been bad. And he looked first off, visually, he looked so unathletic trying to make a tackle. And he doesn't need more footage of him out there being unathletic when he's trying to get $40 million a year from Cleveland.
Yeah, exactly. And, flashbacks of Jay Cutler down the sidelines where he broke his thumb on that attempted tackle as well. Yeah, it's just, you don't want to see it. You don't need it from your franchise quarterback. Rams at the Colts. Rams pull out a 27-24 victory. A really good game. We kind of mentioned it with the Carson Wentz injury where he was looking good. Really, making some athletic plays, finding Michael Pittman when he was, backed up in his own end zone. A couple really nice plays to keep this Colts team in it. The Colts defense stepped up at times when it needed to, for sure. They looked like the Colts defense that we, anticipated coming into the season. And ultimately the Rams, pull out a close 3-point victory. So it's good for them. They get that 2-0 start in that competitive division as well. Meanwhile, the Colts fall to 0-2. And, it's tough when you play well and you lose games that you probably should have ended up winning in the end. But as you mentioned, Eason comes in, throws an untimely interception, and it just wasn't there for the Colts late in this game without Carson Wentz back to help lead that charge and hopefully get them back over the hump. So, Rams end up getting a win. Cooper Kupp again, dominant performance. Matthew Stafford looking very comfortable within this offense. I think that's huge for LA here to start the season early, looking good. You could have anticipated maybe they're going to pull out a couple ugly wins to start the year, but instead, really, they've been convincing these first couple weeks, and they're putting the league on notice here that they're just as forceful of a team to contend with as the teams with big hype like the 49ers in their own division and the Seahawks with all of the flair they have. Watch out for Matt Stafford and company because they seem really just in sync as an offense in particular. If they get Darrell Henderson back, then all bets are off because they have so many playmakers on this team, and obviously the defense speaks for itself.
Yeah, I think my thoughts on Carson Wentz and how frustrating that's got to be for Colts fans because, again, they show the stats, but now it's obviously for a 16-game season versus 17-game season. But starting 0-2 versus 1-1 or 2-0, your chances of making the playoffs are drastically affected in a 16-game season. Now, it should improve because it's a 17-game, but how much? It's not going to drastically improve. And so it's tough. Now, luckily, they're going to get some easy wins depending on the length of Carson Wentz's injury in division against a Jags team that looks all sorts of a mess. And a Texans team now losing their starting quarterback for how long, we don't know. But without Tyrod Taylor, the Texans are certainly rudderless. I'd say that's the best way to describe it. So I'm not gonna bury the Colts yet, but I'll say this: if you're a Colts fan this morning, it's you got to be feeling hurt, like a lot like a Dolphins fan right now. It just feels like the season already is feeling like it maybe is slipping away 2 weeks in. And for a team that made the playoffs last year that has playoff aspirations, that's brutal. For the Rams, again, do not want to be critical of the Rams. Yes, this game probably shouldn't have gotten as close as it got. The defense let the Colts back in this game to make it only a 3-point victory. But again, on the road, getting a win against a playoff team with a great defense and great pieces that the Colts have, not going to be too critical. Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, boy, oh boy, they look like what we expected Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers to look like so far. And so they certainly league on notice. The idea that the tandem of Kupp and Stafford. Kupp is a guy who's a little bit injury prone, so I don't want to, knock on wood if you're a Rams fan. But so far, so good right now for the Rams.
Well, the good news for them too is even if Kupp does end up going down, they have enough, reserves to at least somewhat make up for it with Robert Woods and Josh or not Josh Van, sorry, is Van Jefferson. Yeah. And then obviously, Tyler Higbee and a couple other weapons throughout that team too. So,
I think this is a good point to talk about it today. I heard it from Colin Cowherd actually, and mentioning the kind of the difference between also and I'm bringing it up because of Matt Stafford, like the difference between oh man, a great quarterback and a good quarterback. If I were to say to you, hey, next week, this is word for word what Colin said, and I want to give him credit for it because I think it's a really smart way to think about quarterback play in the modern NFL. If I were to say to you next week, Patrick Mahomes is without Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, you'd be like, man, it's going to be hard. Like that's brutal. Just like if you were to say the Rams are without Cooper Kupp, they're without Van Jefferson. If you lose like two of your three big weapons, versus Kyler Murray and a Lamar Jackson. If you were to tell me Lamar Jackson, he lost his running backs, you know what I mean? And you'd be like, well, whatever. He's still Lamar Jackson. He can run. He can make plays. Like the transition between like a playmaking quarterback and a pocket quarterback. And Matt Stafford is good enough. I think he's in that category. What we're learning now is good enough, like an Aaron Rodgers, like a Patrick Mahomes, where you're like, man, even if he loses his good weapons, he's still good enough if he's in the right system. Not good enough if you're in Detroit. No one's good enough if you're in a bad organization. We're looking at with Zach Wilson, the Jets. Sometimes like the organization is crucial. So putting that little bit of factor into your brain though, of like Matt Stafford just in this system with that coach, it almost feels like you're right. Doesn't really matter. Cooper Kupp's great, but it doesn't really matter who he's going to have if there's an injury or two to his weapons.
It's young in the season, but it's crazy to think that 10 years in, they may have actually unleashed his talent and put it in the right place. So that'll be scary to see. And obviously I have them as the 1 seed. They're looking good so far. A lot of season left to play. We'll see if they're able to keep that up. The Bills absolutely put a hurting on the Miami Dolphins in a very important game, especially for, not just division implications, but you're talking about a New York team going to Miami in the heat of, still summer for them in terms of weather. That's a tough place to play in September. And, a lot of people talk about that, especially the colder weather teams. New England had historically struggled at Miami. So Bills 35-0 win. Now, obviously Tua got hurt in this game, but even before that, it wasn't looking good. The Bills defense really looking good in this one. 6 sacks on the day. They also got an interception, some turnovers here. Bills overall making a big statement after, not looking good in week 1 at home against Pittsburgh, turning around here and really dominating a game against a defensive-minded head coach and a good defense in general, putting up 35 points on them and not allowing any on the opposing side. A big statement win here for Buffalo, I think, going into this one, and now they're both 1-1. They're in the AFC East.
My 14-3 Bills showed up today. They
did,
really
yeah, they did.
Well, yesterday. I'll say this quickly about the Bills. Not much time on this game. It's like, last year when the Colts made the playoffs, you look back at week 1, you're like, man, the Colts lost to the Jaguars. That was the Jaguars' one win was that week 1. Not saying the Steelers are as bad as the Jaguars, but that loss at home to Pittsburgh week 1 is going to be one of those, I think, by week 12, week 13, we look back and go,
scratcher, yeah.
Man, it's a head scratcher. And when the Bills are competing for that 1 seed, because remember, only 1 bye week, and that's so important now in the new NFL playoffs. That Steelers loss, I'm glad to see it motivate the Bills in the right way, because you now have to say to yourself, you have to look at Kansas City. You have to look at Baltimore. You have to look at these Tennessee Titans team, these other teams, say, okay, we have got to keep up with the Joneses in the loss column. You gave one away early at home. To steal one on the road against a great Miami defense and embarrass them, that was great. I'll save this for Miami. Man, it is one of those where I didn't have them in the playoffs. I had them just missing it. I think I had them at 10 wins and just out, or 9 wins and just out. This feels like season altering. If you're Miami, how much more do you kick the tires on making now in-house a Deshaun Watson trade and moments like this? Because at what point in time now you have to say the one thing that Tua had to prove to us this year was that he could stay healthy and his body and his frame, because he's not Kyler Murray. He is not Justin Fields athletic. He is not Lamar Jackson athletic. We kind of think of Tua as like, oh, he's an athlete. He's a lot more Baker Mayfield size and athleticism. But Baker, to his credit, has shown not only is he ridiculously accurate, but he can stay healthy. Tua, we knew he's accurate. We know he makes fairly good decisions, but now he can't stay healthy. And if you're not quick enough to escape the way he did, and he's small framed, this is panic button thing in Miami. And I think that we're seeing the end of Tua in Miami. If he doesn't really bounce back this year, I already think the writing's on the wall that Tua is not starting quarterback in Miami next year.
You could be right. I mean, it doesn't seem like Brian Flores is married to the idea of having Tua being the starting quarterback for the future of the Miami Dolphins. Although I'm sure he embraced having him and trying to give it the best shot. But yeah, I mean, you gotta make decisions for the future of your NFL organization as well. And after a certain amount of time, questions are up in the air. We gave him the benefit of the doubt because of the injury coming out of college, but now it's like, okay, well now is where it's starting to really impact things just in the NFL and just as a whole. Providing questions as to whether or not there's a longevity problem here. So yeah, there's time for them for him particularly to turn it around if he's able to come back soon, and time for them to actually right the ship. But like you said, like if they turn in a 9-8 season and battle and they look all right, I think it's fine. Then maybe there's room to continue with it. But if the wheels come off, then there might be a much quicker expiration date on this situation with Tua in Miami. Let's go. We'll stick with the AFC East here for the other battle between the Patriots and the Jets. Patriots go to New York, win 25-6, but it was much more convincing, I think, of a victory than even a 19-point win seems. Although 19 points, it's not a small gap, but on paper, it looks like it was somehow closer than it was. Mac Jones looking pretty good in this one. Damian Harris having a good outing as well. The Jets, obviously, Zach Wilson, 4 interceptions. It was a rookie day for Zach Wilson for sure. Looked good at times, rolling out. And this is the thing with the athlete and the athletic quarterback in the league is, a lot of people are very excited when they're able to get an athlete at quarterback, but there's so much more to the position that we know. And you already talked about how much the organization matters, and how much help is needed for a young quarterback to be able to really make their way in the NFL. And we're already kind of seeing that, in the spurts that we've seen Trey Lance, seems that he's been put in a good position to score and to win and to get the confidence up. Mac Jones, he's gone through some trials and tribulations already, but he's in a good system, a good position where they're going to run the football. They're going to give him some time. They're going to get, those shallow crosses that New England's so well known for, some easy completions to help get that up. In New York, you're asking Zach Wilson to play hero ball in, the early parts of a season where the guy didn't have much experience in college. And now we're throwing in not a major program. And now we're asking to make big plays in the Big Apple. That's a tough call for anyone to really be able to come to, or to actually break through and live up to that moment. Tough. It's really tough to ask for Zach Wilson here early on. And I don't want to, already make my declaration about what he is as a quarterback. We've clearly seen the ability to extend plays, and he's got a big arm too. But it's a wait and see approach here with him. And early on, he's not being put in a good position to win, and they don't have a running game either. So really all around tough sledding here for New York. They're going to be in some trouble here.
I'm going to be way more critical on Zach Wilson, but I will start with the fact that I think Bill Belichick may be the happiest man in America, because I think he's been waiting to get a quarterback who's a rookie quarterback who has literally no reason to ever have input or say or thought on what and how the organization runs. I do think what you're seeing is, obviously Belichick and Brady is the greatest football marriage of all time. And together they brought out the best in each other for so many years. But I think what we know from Tom Brady's exit was Brady wanted more input. He wanted more say. He wanted more respect. He wanted more love. Just like, tell me how great I am. And he's getting that in Tampa. He's flourishing. And we'll talk about Brady in a second here because it looks amazing. But Bill Belichick is getting exactly what he wants. He gets a quarterback who comes from the Nick Saban system, who is highly motivated because he was under-recruited, a 3-star guy when Alabama basically just gave him a scholarship saying, yeah, if you want to come here and just be a backup for a couple of years, like we need a guy to do that. So to take snaps and to be a practice team, earned his way, made himself into something. Now, again, Mac Jones his numbers compared to Zach Wilson's incredible, but he also can see, though, he's yet to take any deep shots, yet to take any risky stuff, because the Patriots are also showing the NFL This is how you should bring a rookie quarterback along. Make the game easy for the kid. They are making it really easy for him. So credit to them and credit to Mac Jones for buying into it. And, as down as I was on Mac Jones, I still am as far as a talent or as far as like to be on my team because I don't have freaking Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick is making this so easy on him. And any of the quarterbacks, if Bill Belichick had gotten them, they would look this good and we'd be talking about them in this way. I think if he had a Trevor Lawrence or a Trey Lance or a Justin Fields, I think you would see even more shots. I think they probably would be 2-0 at this point in time. I'll put that out there. I'm still willing to say that. Now, as far as Zach Wilson goes, I'll just say this. The reason why I had him below Trey Lance, below Justin Fields, below Trevor Lawrence on my draft boards was because of that pro day video where everyone bought in the hype of it. Did you see that throw he made when he moved to his left? He didn't even have to set his feet. And he flung
with no
it.
defenders. And
The key to that, what I just said was this, when he didn't even have to set his feet. Go back, and I've watched them all multiple times, all 4 of the interceptions that he threw on Sunday. His feet were a bleeping disaster on all 4 of them, especially the deep ball shot. He didn't flick his hips. He just kind of like did this little weird hop little step thing. It reminded me of Mitchell Trubisky's feet that always drove me crazy. Where I'm like, set your feet. What are your feet doing? Because he's just athletic. He's got twisty body arm thing. He likes to try to emulate Mahomes. But if you watch Mahomes, dude always sets his feet unless he literally cannot. Zach Wilson, that 4th interception, the deep ball one, had a beautiful pocket all the time in the world, stared a receiver down, did not set his feet, and threw a duck to get picked off, and rightfully so. I never seen 3 balls intercepted by a quarterback where literally the defender didn't have to do anything. It was just like, oh, this is my ball. So I think Zach Wilson, if you're the Jets, and the problem with the Jets offensively right now is they don't have a veteran quarterback in there to help him be like, dude, this, and this, like to just kind of help him process stuff. So hopefully the staff that Robert Saleh's put together can do that. I would be shitting bricks if I was a Jets fan this morning.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, actually, because it's really about trying to coast off of your talent alone. And in the NFL, you're going to get eaten alive doing stuff like that. You can't rely on that, especially, Mahomes is one of those outliers anyway. I mean, he can make those types of plays on his talent alone, but he still goes back to his mechanics, as you mentioned, the majority of the time. It's important in the league. And the reason for it is the consistency that it provides. And so that's, I mean, you look at the Tom Brady's and the Peyton Mannings. I mean, that is their footwork is masterful. And that's, probably one of the most underrated elements of the position in general. Let's move on to the 49ers at the Eagles. Sloppy game, not really super impressive on either side. We mentioned the 49ers getting absolutely injury riddled in this one, but the Eagles did as well. 17-11, San Francisco comes out on top in this one. Jalen Hurts not looking super great in this one, although he was good with his feet. Not so good through the air, about a 50% completion percentage for him. Meanwhile, the 49ers are able to eke out this victory by 6 points. And once again, it's one of those, it's a win's a win. You'll take it, but not super impressed. And now that the 49ers are very likely going to have to revamp their backfield once again, we talk about how they can insert guys into that backfield and make it work. But there does come a point, Mark, where you can't overcome several depletions to that part of the roster, because then at a certain point, you do need professionals. And when you're looking for guys that haven't been playing in a couple of years, or, looking for guys that have had injury struggles for quite some time as your, go-tos, because you got to get reinforcements in there, that doesn't bode well. I mean, we've seen the Ravens kind of have to do a similar approach, but thankfully they still have a couple guys that were on the roster there. But yeah, 49ers in a position here where they're going to have to win in some more convincing ways if we think that they're going to be able to contend for this NFC West title, particularly how some of these other teams like the Seahawks and the Rams have been playing.
Yeah, I mean, again, credit to them for going on the road all the way to the East Coast, early start, and getting a win. That's never easy. I will say this, John Lynch is a Hall of Fame free safety. He has to prove that he can be a Hall of Fame general manager. Make a trade, start calling around the league. They need to replenish that running back room, and I would do it by a trade if I had to. It's still so early in the season. You can go out and get a guy. There's got to be someone, a second stringer on a roster that seems available. Throw a bunch of money at the Cowboys for a Tony Pollard or someone. Maybe you could steal someone away or do something to improve your running back room. But again, credit to them. They got to win. Not as much Trey Lance as I thought. I would say I thought they would kind of increase. But I think it's also one of those games where you just say to yourself, we can't make a big mistake and Jimmy Garoppolo is good at not making the big mistake. And as far as the Eagles go, Jalen Hurts certainly looked way better against Atlanta than he did against 49ers. But again, credit to the Eagles. They've impressed me so far this year for a team that I thought was going to be hot garbage. They've been just okay, which is a lot better than hot garbage. But I do think the plan for them is so smart. They're giving Jalen Hurts the chance to earn this job, to make mistakes, to see if he can learn from them over the course of a 17-game season. So actually more interested than I thought I would be in where the Eagles are going through 2 weeks.
Yeah. There was definitely some encouragement there, and they are, firmly planted in a competition for that division. Something I wasn't necessarily sold on before the season, but now it really does seem somewhat plausible. And yeah, got to give kudos to Sirianni. His teams have looked better prepared than I also envisioned coming into the year. So Philadelphia, certainly a surprise to me early on this season, but to contend with San Fran and the way they did, definitely got to give them props. The Saints went on the road in an NFC South battle with Carolina, and the Panthers are now 2-0 after a 26-7 victory. After Jameis Winston throws 5 touchdown passes against the Green Bay Packers, that defense holds Aaron Rodgers and company to no touchdowns. They go on the road here and they get lit up by Carolina for the most part. Sam Darnold looked pretty good, all things considered. He had a really bad interception mark where he tried to do a two-handed shovel pass to a running back and just ended up shovel passing it right into the defensive lineman's hands. Looked a bit, scrambled there for a second. Other than that, though, Darnold puts up a 300-yard performance, 2 touchdowns. McCaffrey, they fed him early and often in this one, which was a key to victory for them. He didn't have, a monster game, but he did what McCaffrey does. And overall, DJ Moore, the receiving core really looked good. Sam Darnold seems a lot more comfortable in this offense after the question marks coming into the year, what it was going to be like with yet another offensive system for him to learn. He seems to be growing within this offense. And all in all, I mean, that Panthers defense is incredible, man. It's not like Jameis Winston's a Hall of Famer or anything like that, but given what he did in week 1 to a relatively decent defense in Green Bay, although maybe it's a lot worse than we thought, for him to really struggle the way he did, for the Panthers to really get after him, that front 7 and front 4 in particular is really stout, and they got some ballers. I mean, Jeremy Chin is looking great in year 2. J.C. Horn, the rookie, already got, his first interception. They spent a top 10 pick on him. So really this defense looks like it may be the one to carry this team. And the offense seems like an offense that can play with a lead and play when it's comfortable. So yeah, I was high on them coming in. I feel somewhat validated early on, but I'm not, cheering on that prediction just yet. It's only 2 games in, but a big win for them against a divisional opponent. And not only that, but a home win to start the year and to get what could be a tiebreaker later on. These are big implications early on in the season to get a win like this against the Saints.
Yeah, I love everything you said. I don't want to spend too much time on it. You covered everything there. I will say this quickly for the Saints. They looked like a team that was missing like 11 coaches for COVID. I think it was something like that. It was a crazy.
Yeah, I think 7. They had 7 offensive assistants. Yeah, so it may have been even more.
I mean, it was. Yeah. They looked all out of sorts, and but also for a team that's just not home right now. We got to remember that they're not sleeping in their beds. And so they looked all out of sorts. The Saints, I think, are somewhere in between week 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll figure that out in week 3.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And that's like we've talked about. There's a lot of things to develop here, but certainly the coaching staff, I'm sure that played a factor. When you have seven or even more than that people missing, there's going to be some sort of impact because those types of numbers are just hard to replicate. You can't really do too much in terms of replacing those guys in the room. Broncos get a win on the road at Jacksonville, Mark, 23-13. Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, what are your impressions of him early on this season, and what are your impressions of Trevor Lawrence early on this season? And I'll throw out the stats on these guys and then give you the floor here. Teddy Bridgewater, 26 of 34. Not often that Teddy Two Gloves attempts 34 passes in a game. Over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, sacked 3 times for 26 yards. Had a passer rating of 125. Trevor Lawrence, on the other hand, 14 of 33, 118 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and 20 yards rushing on the day. Your thoughts on the quarterback play of these two guys early on, and were there other things that stood out to you in this game and just how they've been performing so far?
Yeah, 2 things. I think if Bill Belichick's the happiest guy on the a coach on the planet this morning, I think Vic Fangio might be the second, because I think what Vic Fangio is feeling is vindicated. He's showing the front office and he's showing the rest of the NFL, hey, my defense is great. What I can do as a head coach is great if I just have a quarterback who's an adult. You know what I mean? Give me someone who's a capable adult. And Teddy is more than that. And Teddy, to his credit, he has a lot more weapons than he did in Carolina last year. And I think that it's not a shot at Carolina. It's just the truth of where Teddy's at. So the fact that he's putting up numbers, he's taking advantage of the fact that he's got guys and he wants to be a starter in this league. I also think it's kind of one of those things where, Denver and Carolina were the 2 teams that, remember, when we go back to the draft, kind of passed on quarterbacks. They let Justin Fields slip and all of a sudden sits there for the Bears to get him. You're saying to yourself, maybe it is vindicated. I mean, I think both of them, I think for Carolina right now, it does look like Sam Darnold could be the future. And if you're Denver, you're not as in a miserable spot as you maybe thought you were with having Teddy Bridgewater and kind of just, I don't think they're a Super Bowl team, but I think he can lead that. He's showing that he can lead them to the playoffs. So Vic Fangio, happy for him this morning. I will say this about Trevor Lawrence. How are you going to ask your number 1 overall pick to throw 33 times against that defense? I mean, at what point in time do you just got to say, we need to run the ball? And even that means like a couple extra 3 and outs in this game. Protect the kid. Give him a chance to not get hit as much as he's already getting hit. So, he is by far the Jags' best player. I mean, you watch it. When I watch Trevor Lawrence play, it's not how I feel about Zach Wilson. I feel completely different. I think if you're the Jags, you should still be very happy you got Trevor Lawrence. The kid is an incredible talent, and he understands football, it seems, a lot more than Zach Wilson. You can just tell, though, he is clear. Every game he's going into, it feels like he's being outcoached. His coach staff's getting outcoached, and he's at an incredible dearth of talent.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be tough sledding this year for them. No doubt about it. A lot of people, predicted that coming into the year. You see the flashes of greatness from Trevor Lawrence, some smart decisions that, kept his team, competing at least. But it's just going to be difficult. There's just too many question marks on this team and just not enough talent. So that's really where they're at with their rookie quarterback. And, I'm sure more bright days ahead for him. The Vikings drop a heartbreaker on the road to the Cardinals. Arizona looked great in week 1. They looked good in week 2 as well, but in terms of their defense, it was a much different story as the Vikings were able to put up 33 points on them in this one. In classic Minnesota fashion, it's a missed kick to end the game, and really in a brutal fashion there, Greg Joseph, who also hit a 50-yarder earlier on, missing what was relatively, it's not a chip shot, but close enough to a chip shot field goal, and just misses on that one, and they fall by a point. So now the Vikings are 0-2 in the NFC North. The Cardinals 2-0 in the NFC West. A real shift there when they really could have equalized things. So Arizona once again behind a dominant performance from Kyler Murray. They're showing they really don't care if they don't have much of a run game. They don't need it. 400 yards for Kyler Murray in this one. DeAndre Hopkins, that connection is as dominant as ever. And Murray made some phenomenal, plays, eluding the pass rush, extending the play, and finding open guys. This really could be one of those Kyler Murray years that we've been waiting for, where he's in the MVP conversation for the entire season. But right now he's got his Cardinals at 2-0. And even though they were, that close to losing it, Arizona comes away with a win. And that's really all that matters, as we've talked about. And the Vikings finding a way to lose in a really close game where, as we've mentioned, Mike Zimmer's been on the hot seat, and this cannot help his cause. Even though it came down to a kicker, you can't blame him for that. It still shows up at the end of the day, another loss for him and company. A brutal way to go there for Minnesota, and when they're trying to compete there for even a wild card spot at the very least, a tough spot to start 0-2 there.
Absolutely love that I made money on this game. I will say this: when I saw the Cardinals were down 21-7, I live bet them as money line dogs. It was getting like plus 190 or almost 200 with the Cardinals win. I just was like, there's just no way. It's too early. It was early in the second quarter. And that Kyler Murray is about to just start throwing the ball 50 times after that. Especially when he's down, it's a little bit like with the Chiefs. When the Chiefs are down, you're almost kind of like, okay, you're playing into exactly what the Cardinals want to do, exactly what the Chiefs want to do. They just want to throw the ball anyways. If they're in a tight game, you're going to get tight because you're like, wait, should we run it here? Should we waste clock? No. Being down 21-7 for the Cardinals is like, all right, money, open it up, 5 wide, let's go. And Kyler Murray has had an incredible start to the season. Credit to them. I don't know what to do with the Arizona Cardinals. I thought they'd be 1-1 at this point in time, losing to Tennessee, beating Minnesota. They're 2-0. That NFC West is just so good looking. And, if they can keep building off this momentum, that's a good thing. Keep going and keep Kyler's healthy, because he's everything to them right now. He's their engine. And for the Vikings, I saw this coming. I feel good once again, second year in a row, about my Vikings prediction and understanding what the Vikings are. I'm done with Kirk Cousins. I mean, it feels like when I'm watching Matt Ryan even. Yeah, this guy is talented enough to play quarterback, and he's good enough. But it comes to a point where you're watching Kyler Murray versus Kirk Cousins, you're going, yeah, that's what quarterbacking should look like in the 2021 season. But that's what you should be striving for. And Minnesota, they have so many other weapons. Imagine if they had a dynamic playmaker quarterback, they wouldn't be 0-2. I'll just say that.
You bring up a good point, and it reminded me of something I was thinking yesterday as I was watching the games. And my thought was, if you can look at a team, and especially their offense, and you just say to yourself, can I see this offense lighting up a defense, week to week? Do they have the potential to absolutely light it up? If they do, I think they've got a really good chance to make a deep push in the playoffs and contend for a Super Bowl. I don't feel that way about Minnesota. Right now, I don't feel that way about Pittsburgh. I don't feel that way about a lot of these offenses. The Chargers, I feel that way about. I feel the Cowboys can light up a defense. The Buccaneers can do that. Kansas City, Baltimore.
Oakland showing. I mean, the Raiders are showing.
The Raiders can light you up. So there are a lot of offenses here that can really do some damage. And if you're not one of those offenses, I don't feel so great about your chances throughout the season. That can change, but that's just how I feel. And so we'll kind of go to that in an offensive showcase. The Buccaneers win big over the Falcons, 48-25. Never felt close in this one at all. You mentioned Matt Ryan. I mean, he put up 300 yards with 2 touchdowns there, but the Buccaneers really just absolutely hassling him all day long in this one. They only, came up with, I believe it was 3 sacks on the day. Or no, I'm sorry. The Falcons had 3 sacks in this one. The Buccaneers only had 1 sack of Matt Ryan, but the number of times that they were able to pressure him, and they ended up baiting him into 3 interceptions in this one. That was the difference maker, is their play at the line of scrimmage, and to be able to really put Matt Ryan in less than advantageous positions. They can't run the football, the Falcons can't, and the Tampa Bay offense can really do just about anything they want to. You talked about how great Tom Brady looked. He's looked amazing this year. I believe Colin Cowherd said earlier this season, what's the difference between 44-year-old Tom Brady and 34-year-old Tom Brady? I can't tell the difference. He looks better. So it's just amazing. The pockets he has, too, to work within. It's still like, dude, how does this guy have time? How does he have time no matter what the team he goes to? It's impressive. It's incredible. And Tom Brady, 5 touchdown performance. I mean, what more can you say that hasn't been said?
He's got 9 touchdowns so far this year. I mean, he's on his way to being the MVP of the NFL season. They look unbeatable right now. And again, it's one of those where it's like you just say to yourself, at what point in time do we as fans just have to you just have to start laughing? I mean, like Tom Brady is at that point where I'm just laughing. I'm enjoying it. I'm just enjoying watching him play because it is the most incredible thing that we'll probably ever see in our football lives, at least, you know what I mean? His 22-year NFL journey so far. And year 22, 2-0, looking great. And for the Falcons, I'll just say this. Again, Matt Ryan is not a bad NFL quarterback. He is very capable of playing quarterback in the NFL. But in the modern NFL, when you even compare him you just see these young guys moving around, making plays, and being able to be a spark for their team. Like saying to yourself, I mean, it's the difference. It's Bears fans watching Andy Dalton versus Justin Fields. Andy Dalton can make all the throws. I mean, he's accurate. But in the modern NFL, you need a guy who can make plays, who could be a playmaker, because the defenses are giving you that because of the way the rules are. And unless you're Tom Brady right now in the pocket, it doesn't seem like any of the just pocket guys who aren't a playmaker. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is a playmaker. Matt Stafford is still so more in his prime, and his arm is so incredible. Josh Allen, same like
Derek Carr, maybe.
Yeah, maybe Derek Carr is the younger guy who's still just the pocket guy, but even him seems way more mobile. It's just, if you're an Atlanta Falcons fan, you got to be saying to yourself, can we get Spencer Rattler or can we get Spencer Rattler? You know what I mean?
I am not a big Spencer Rattler fan, so I'm the one guy that doesn't.
I'm not either. I'm not either, but he's the name right now because Sam Howell blew.
That is true. All right, let's move on to the Cowboys at the Chargers. Wild game in this one as well. 20-17, the Cowboys win on a last-second field goal by Greg Zuerlein. 59-yard field goal, or 56-yard field goal, I should say. This game ended in a really weird way, Mark. It was a contender for our bold strategy of the week because Mike McCarthy and company were driving down the field, to go and win this game. They're facing a 56-yard field goal, but they have time on the clock. It's about 35 seconds left. Time to run another play and get closer for your kicker. Obviously, 56-yard, you're not super comfortable about. I don't care who, even if you have Justin Tucker. And Mike McCarthy, they were very confused on the sidelines. Time is continuing to click down, and eventually they end up just, rolling out the field goal unit at the end there to kick a 56-yarder. At the end, he says that the reason for all of this was because he couldn't see the clock. Apparently the clock went out or something, and he didn't know how much time was left.
Moore couldn't see the clock either, so they were relying on their people in the booth. Dan, I'll just say this. I mean, it to me, that is 100% lack of preparedness. This is an end of the game situation that you have to prepare for. We have this much time. Do we want to try to get 5 more yards, 10 more yards, or do we want to, you know what I mean? Like you've got to know exactly what you're doing. And the Cowboys clearly didn't know. There was a panic, and they whittled it down and got lucky that he made the kick.
They got bailed out.
It felt like the Chargers lost that game and not the Cowboys won it. But both teams are 1-1. I kind of have similar expectations for both teams. They're both like my last wild card teams in. both starting the season 1-1. Justin Herbert is such an incredible, fun quarterback to watch again. And even Dak. I mean, Dak looked off, but I mean, I think there's a lot of time. There's still a lot of, I think there was a clear, like, we need to run the ball type of feel from Dallas. And so, again, I think Dallas is that type of team where I'm very excited to watch them weeks 3, 4, and 5. Like, how do they start to really gel? Because you get the sense they just want to throw it 60 times. But you get the sense also that Jerry Jones, like, I paid Zeke Elliott $90 million. We need Zeke Elliott to rush the ball too. So it just feels like there's an internal struggle in Dallas's identity. So they're going to be really interesting to watch for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and it's actually, it ends up being Justin Herbert, who's throwing 41 times, but 31 of 41 for 338 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks, not his finest hour, but he did look really good at times. And, from what we saw last year, I think there's still more to come here for Herbert and the Chargers offense. On the flip side, you mentioned it. It was interesting to see they really split carries between Tony Pollard and Zeke, and Tony Pollard's the one who has a 100-yard day.
Oh, looks better.
Yeah,
better right now.
So it will be very interesting to see kind of what they do in that room as the year goes on, because Tony Pollard may end up getting more involved. But as you mentioned, he might be a good trade candidate there for some of those teams that are really in desperate need. Titans getting a big road victory over the Seattle Seahawks, 33-30. One of these games that's just back and forth, goes to overtime. And Derrick Henry, monster performance in this one. Vintage Derrick Henry, who has 35 carries, Mark, 182 yards, 3 touchdowns, also hauls in about 6 catches for 55 yards in this one, too. It was all Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill and company still don't seem in sync. It really does seem like that Arthur Smith, moving to Atlanta has really taken its toll early on. Julio Jones leads the team in receptions and yards. So he had a bounce back performance after week 1. It didn't look like he was going to do much this season, comes back and has a big performance like this. So overall, it really felt like a Tennessee Titans game where they lean on Derrick Henry and he's able to take that workload. Whereas Russell Wilson looks really good too, but at the end of the day, needs other people to step up. And the, Seattle Seahawks defense, are as good as they looked in week 1, weren't able to get the stop they needed and let Derrick Henry run all over them. It's going to be another question mark going throughout the season. Is this defense good enough week in and week out to let Russell Wilson, take over and lead this team to victory? Or is it going to be a thing where, okay, every single drive we need Russell Wilson to go down and get a touchdown somehow because no one else is stepping up? By the way, Tyler Lockett looks incredible, and he's probably still the most underrated receiver in the NFL. But I'll yield the floor to you. What impressed you most about this game?
Well, what's weird is, again, that it's one of those weeks where I look at the Titans and I think, oh, yeah, I predicted them to be 1-1 through the season, but they lost the one I predicted to win.
Yeah.
So for the Titans, I 100% still feel very shaky about them because I was so high on them to be I think the 4th seed, win their division. I still think they're in the driver's seat to win that division because of the mess that Indy's become with Carson Wentz's injury. But I just say you're absolutely right. Something seems off. I did think that Julio Jones touchdown was a touchdown. I thought that was total BS. That was a touchdown. He looked incredible. Julio Jones getting on the same page while Derrick Henry having a big day is exactly what I expect from this offense. But defensively, man, the Titans have got to figure some shit out. They have to be able to consistently get pressure on the quarterback, and they're just not. And if you're Russell Wilson, you got to go into those meetings and say, I hope he's able to close the door with Pete Carroll and say, this is on you. Like, you have 2 options here. Again, let me cook and just let me keep going because I'm the only thing that's working right now with Lockett and Metcalf and Everett. Gerald, that great tight end pickup, by the way. Like Everett, one of those guys who's really been a great piece for them. So we're clicking. You're supposed to be your defensive head coach who made your your fame in defense. Like, figure this shit out. You got your guy, Adams. You know what I mean? Like, you still have pieces on this defense. They're just getting embarrassed, and that was embarrassing what Derrick Henry did to them. And so I expected the Seahawks to be 2-0 at this point in time. I'm not pushing the panic button yet, even though everyone else in that division is 2-0. I still think they will right that ship. And that was just one of those kind of man-up performances, I think, from Tennessee. Like, we ain't starting 0-2. We're like, it just felt like they were the hungrier dog, and they, you know what I mean? And they chewed through the leash to eat. You know what I mean?
They were confident. They had a game plan. They stuck to it, and it ended up working out for them. To your point, it's been way too long since the Legion of Boom. Pete Carroll's had plenty of opportunity to rebuild this defense. It just hasn't returned to the point that it needs to be. Bobby Wagner's too good. Jamal Adams is too good to go to waste on a defensive unit like this. So we'll see if they're able to turn that around, because Russell Wilson, once again, having a field day. 22 of 31 for him, 343 yards, 2 touchdowns. And, he also had 16 yards rushing on the ground, too. So, Russell Wilson can't do much more than that for his team. Let's go now to the Sunday night game to wrap things up. The Ravens pulling out a thrilling victory. We have been treated to some phenomenal primetime games. 36-35 over the Kansas City Chiefs in an incredible display by both Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. For these guys to really step up and, against, especially for Patrick Mahomes, against a really good defense in Baltimore. They're really going toe-to-toe. We expected this to be a shootout. What we did not expect, Mark, was for, the first half to have 5 touchdowns, and the names of those touchdowns were guys of the likes of Demarcus Robinson, Devin Duvernay. You had, the Latavius Murrays. You had Byron Pringle scoring this game. It's like, where's the Tyreek Hills? Where's the Marquise Browns? Second half was a little bit different of a story there. But nonetheless, this lived up to the billing of an absolute, heavyweight bout and a shootout for the ages. Kind of reminded me of that Rams-Chiefs game from a couple of years ago, Thursday night, where Jared Goff and company were just going back and forth between him and Patrick Mahomes. This one had all the makings. This was a vintage win and a signature win for Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens, especially late in this game, to go for it on 4th down, for John Harbaugh to have the faith in Lamar Jackson to make the call. You see that being shared around on social media right now of him saying, Lamar, do you want to go for it? Lamar says, yes, we're going for it. And he's like, all right, let's do it. That was cool to see. And Lamar Jackson's able to get it with his feet and ice the game, secure his first win over Patrick Mahomes. And look, it's not a playoff win, and that's what Lamar's been chasing. But this is probably Lamar's best win of his career right here.
Yeah, I mean, it is a huge win. I don't want it to be understated. I mean, again, I thought the Ravens would be 1-1 through 2 games, and it's an opposite one. Let me just say this for Chiefs fans. Let me talk to Chiefs fans here. If you're a Chiefs fan this morning, I think this is such a win for you, because you now have given them this confidence that, they can be beat. Like, they can be beat. And if you're a Chiefs fan, do you really want to be 4-0 against Lamar Jackson, 4-0 against this iteration of the Ravens, with the possibility of having to meet them in the playoffs and anything? You know what I mean? Like, I think getting the loss out of the way early may not be the worst thing in the world. And you look at it, you see the stats on it, and it's so laughable. This is the first September loss for Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. That was the first September interception for Patrick Mahomes. It took that incredible of an effort from Lamar Jackson, 2 touchdowns in the 4th quarter, to steal a win at home and going for it on 4th and 1 and causing a fumble from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And you beat the Chiefs by 1 at home. Like, the Chiefs are fine. This is a great win from the Ravens. It's a boost. It's a morale boosting win. It's a win I don't want to give up if I'm the Chiefs, because you let the Ravens have some life. But in the end, you can also say to yourself, hey, now the monkey's off our back a little bit too. They beat us. Fine. You can beat us. Great. You can beat us. More motivation for us to kick your ass the next time we see you, type of thing. Big brother, little brother thing. It was a fantastic all-time classic game, fun, great game. You're absolutely right. The primetime games have been fantastic so far. I have a feeling we'll see the Chiefs and Ravens. They'll play again.
Yeah, I imagine this is going to be a cool playoff matchup to look for. But again, like I said, I'm not worried about Kansas City either in this one. But I thought it was a really big win for Baltimore for several reasons. But again, this is one of those games that a tiebreaker, could come down to that for the one
Sure.
seed. And we mentioned the one seed, how much more important that is now, given it's the only bye you get for the playoffs. So something to keep an eye on as we meander through the rest of the NFL season. But kudos to Lamar and company. They get the win. They respond well to a week one loss. And here they are right in the mix of things and really showing off despite the injuries that they have sustained with that team. All right, Mark, let's look at Monday Night Football here. We'll do our preview and our thoughts on this game and then close out the show. Lions at the Packers. Right now I'm looking at ESPN, which uses Caesar Sportsbook, and the Packers are heavy favorites in this one, 11.5 points. Obviously coming off of an absolute dud in week one against the Saints. The Lions 0-1, but really a fairly convincing game against the 49ers last week. It was obviously a lot closer than it really was, but at the end of the day, it was a 41-33 game, and the Lions were able to fight and claw their way back into that game and make it a close one in the end. So really, this is an interesting one, but it is at Lambeau Park. It's a home opener. Packers come in very motivated in this one. What are your thoughts on this? Because 11.5 points is just, I feel like they could easily cover that, but it's also something really scary that I'm not sure I want to touch, given what we saw last week and how much the Lions really fought and clawed.
So 2 immediate thoughts. I think the easy thing is for the easy analysis is to go, Aaron Rodgers is going to be bounce backs. You've seen it last week. Teams had a bad week last week, had a great week too. So you count on that for the Packers. But remember, the Lions also lost last week, and they did scrap, and they were in a tight game against a very good team. The Lions had a better week one than the Packers by far.
Yeah.
The Lions are not something to totally dismay. I get this is in Lambeau. I get that it's prime time. Jared Goff has played in a lot of primetime games. I don't think Jared Goff's going to be shaken at all. Jared Goff played with that broken thumb in Lambeau last year in the cold. Him going to Lambeau is nothing to be, I think, to shake at. I have already bet the Lions to cover this game. I've already bet the over of 49 as well. And I did a parlay on the Barstool Sportsbook for Jared Goff over 1.5 touchdown passes and over 254 yards passing. I think that the Packers will win, but I think this game is going to be higher scoring and closer. I think it could end up being Packers 35, 28. You know what I mean? Like I think it's over. I think Goff has a good game. I wouldn't even be shocked if midway through the third quarter it's 21-7 and the Lions go on a little bit of a run, get a couple scores. All of a sudden 21-21, maybe going late into the third with a Packers score late in the third, something like that. I think this game could be closer than you think and certainly more entertaining. The Lions will scrap. The Lions will claw. They don't get a lot of primetime games. Jared Goff has played in a lot of primetime games. So I think there's going to be something to that a little bit. And also, let's just be honest, the Packers were not great. And as much as I expect them to bounce back, I mean, even if they bounce back 100%, like increase their approach, like that's still like, oh, so you're going to be just like an okay team? I mean, they were horrible week one. So I'm high on the Lions covering. I think the Packers should win, though. It's at home. If this game was in Detroit, and like maybe Detroit lost a close one at San Francisco, and there's maybe some other things, I might actually take the Lions in an upset just because of the money would be good in a betting standpoint. But don't count out. I think Jared Goff has a big game, and I think the Lions cover.
I think the Packers win this one as well. I'm with you there, but I think it's a little bit lower scoring. And I could easily see, like you mentioned, a Packers, shootout and, Aaron Rodgers has 5 touchdown passes. That obviously could easily happen. I just feel like maybe they go into this one a little bit too antsy. It's the return to Lambeau, return to fans. There's probably going to be heightened emotion coming into this game. And I think maybe they start out a little bit, just out of pace, like, the jitters there a little bit. So I could see this a little bit lower scoring, actually. I would probably take the under on the 49, to be honest. I think like 27-17 feels a little more right for me. But I think we end up at the same conclusion with the Lions covering that big spread and the Packers coming out victorious. So I'm looking forward to it. I actually think it'll be a fun game to watch, which I didn't think I would say coming into the year looking at this one. But the Lions intrigue me a little bit. And I'm ready to see how the Packers respond to that just absolutely pitiful performance in week 1. Of course, we're going to have our best bets of the week coming up later. We'll post that on social media, so stay tuned for that. We still got to see kind of where these lines move after this Monday night game and things like that. But that is our prediction, and this has been our Week 2 recap episode of the Football Lounge. Glad to have Mark back. Glad you're doing well, man, and we're just really excited for this Monday night game and for this Week 3 ahead. Be sure to check us out on YouTube, I should say, and on Twitter at FB Lounge Pod. We're also on Facebook as well. And you can hit us up and just let us know your thoughts as we get ready for Week 3 of the NFL season. But that will do it for us here on the Week 2 Recap Show. We'll see you back here next week.